Welcome back to Mindset Motivation, where science meets motivation to transform your life from the inside out. Today, we're diving into a game-changing insight that's backed by cutting-edge science, and it could completely shift how you think about recovery, fat loss, aging, and performance. Here's the big claim. There's one simple daily habit that can increase your body's natural growth hormone production by up to 500%. Yes, 500%. And no, it's not a supplement, not a workout, and not some overnight miracle. Growth hormone is your body's master recovery hormone. It burns fat, builds lean muscle, repairs tissue, supports deep sleep, and slows down aging. But most people are unknowingly suppressing it with their daily routines. In this episode, I'm going to break down the science behind this natural growth hormone boost, what the habit is, how it works, and how you can start using it today to unlock better energy, faster recovery, and a leaner, more vibrant body. Let's get into it, because your next level isn't found in more effort, it's found in smarter habits. When we talk about optimizing hormones for physical performance, longevity, fat metabolism, and even mental clarity, growth hormone consistently stands out as one of the key players. It's one of those chemicals that's doing a tremendous amount of behind-the-scenes work. Now, a lot of people associate growth hormone purely with things like muscle growth or anti-aging, and yes, those are certainly valid associations, but it's much broader than that. Growth hormone, or GH, influences tissue repair, bone density, recovery, and even cognitive sharpness in indirect but powerful ways. Now, here's the exciting part. You can tap into massive increases in your natural growth hormone production, and you don't need drugs or expensive treatments to do it. You just need to understand how your biology responds to certain patterns of behavior. One of the most effective, scientifically validated ways to boost GH, and I'm talking about a 500% increase or more in short bursts, is through intense physical exercise. Not just any exercise, though. I'm talking about high-intensity interval training, short bursts of extremely challenging effort, followed by rest or low-intensity recovery. When done correctly, this style of training triggers a powerful hormonal cascade, and growth hormone is a major part of that. Now, let's unpack that, because the mechanism is important if you want to really own this tool and make it work for you. When you engage in short-duration, high-effort physical movements, like sprinting, cycling all out, or doing rapid high-resistance reps with short rest periods, your body shifts into a kind of metabolic gear that's very different from steady-state exercise like jogging or long-distance walking. During these bursts, your anaerobic energy systems kick in. You're creating lactate, you're pushing your heart rate close to maximum, and you're putting your neuromuscular system under intense demand. This is the kind of stress the body interprets as a survival challenge, and in response, it ramps up growth hormone production dramatically. Studies have shown that growth hormone levels can spike to 5 times their baseline values after just a few rounds of properly structured high-intensity intervals. That's not a small difference. That's a biological event. And the best part? This doesn't require hours in the gym. In fact, these growth hormone spikes are triggered more effectively by short, high-effort workouts than they are by long, moderate ones. Now, this doesn't mean you have to be an elite athlete to use this. That's a common misconception. The key is relative intensity, meaning you go hard for you. For one person, that might be sprinting up a hill. For another, it could be fast cycling on a stationary bike. For someone else, it might be pushing a sled or doing kettlebell swings. It doesn't matter what the movement is, as long as you can safely ramp up intensity and give your body that signal that says, this is a challenge we need to adapt to. That adaptation is where the growth hormone release really kicks in. Let's talk about timing and structure, because that matters. One of the most effective protocols involves warming up thoroughly, then performing intervals of about 20 to 30 seconds of all-out effort, followed by 1 to 2 minutes of active recovery. This can be repeated for 5 to 8 rounds, depending on your fitness level. The total workout time can be as short as 15 to 20 minutes. And yet, the hormonal impact, particularly on growth hormone, is disproportionately high. That's the leverage point. You're getting a massive return on investment in terms of hormonal output, which can then benefit you in recovery, fat metabolism, cognitive alertness, and even mood regulation. An important detail here is the metabolic stress you're inducing. It's not just about movement. It's about how deeply you're pushing into that anaerobic threshold. You want to feel that deep effort, the kind that makes your muscles burn, that elevates your heart rate significantly, and that leaves you winded at the end of the interval. That's where lactate is being produced. And lactate interestingly, is one of the key signals that prompts the pituitary gland to release growth hormone. So yes, that burning sensation, that discomfort during those final seconds of a hard sprint, that's biochemically valuable. That's the furnace in which your GH spike is forged. Now, let's link this to fat loss, because that's a major reason people care about growth hormone. GH has a powerful lipolytic effect, meaning it tells the body to break down stored fat for fuel. But that doesn't just happen passively. It's paired with that burst of lactate, with elevated adrenaline, with the kind of physical output that signals to the body, we need energy and we need it now. And if you do this consistently, say 2 to 3 times per week, your baseline GH levels can actually shift upward over time. That means you're not just getting temporary spikes, you're potentially resetting your endocrine system to be more responsive and efficient long term. Now, here's where it gets even more interesting, and this connects to the other key habits I often talk about. If you perform this kind of training in a fasted state, typically in the morning after a full night's sleep, the GH response is amplified even further. That's because fasting already increases growth hormone secretion slightly on its own. It's a kind of evolutionary adaptation. Your body says, hey, we haven't eaten yet, we might need to move and hunt and stay sharp. So GH goes up naturally to protect muscle mass and fuel cognitive alertness. When you stack high intensity exercise on top of that fasted state, you're layering 2 growth hormone stimulators together, and they're synergistic. It's like lighting a match in a room filled with oxygen. Now, I want to be clear about safety and progression. If you're new to high intensity training, don't just jump into maximum sprints. Build up gradually. Start with shorter intervals or lower resistance. The goal is to challenge yourself, not to break yourself. Injury risk increases when form breaks down, especially under fatigue. So be deliberate and smart with your intensity. Think quality over quantity. 2 or 3 high-quality interval sessions per week can be enough to yield the growth hormone benefits we're talking about. Let's also talk briefly about recovery, because growth hormone plays a critical role here. One of its main functions is to repair tissue, not just muscle, but tendons, ligaments, even the lining of blood vessels. That's why you often see elite athletes using modalities that enhance natural GH release, because it accelerates recovery and adaptation. But you don't need to be an elite athlete to benefit. If you're someone who's working a job, managing a family, and trying to stay healthy, just 20 minutes of properly timed high-intensity training can give you a recovery advantage that extends well beyond the workout window. You'll notice better sleep, less soreness, and over time, improved physical resilience. And here's another layer to consider: psychological effects. There's something incredibly powerful about completing a short, intense workout, the effort, the strain, the breathlessness, and then the recovery. That pattern mimics stress exposure followed by calm, which is one of the best ways to train your nervous system to handle life's challenges. That's part of the reason people report elevated mood and confidence after these sessions. You're not just training your body, you're training your perception of stress. And when you combine that with the physiological benefits, especially the boost in GH, you're creating a whole body, whole mind effect that can set the tone for your entire day. So to bring it all together, if you want to boost your natural growth hormone levels significantly, and I mean by several 100%, you don't need supplements or hacks or complicated protocols. You need intense, focused effort for short durations. High-intensity interval training taps directly into the body's most primal hormonal systems. It leverages evolutionary biology to enhance modern performance. And the beauty is it's accessible. No fancy equipment required, no massive time investment, just your body, your will, and a bit of structure. This is a tool you can use starting tomorrow. Wake up, hydrate, maybe get some morning sunlight on your face to set your circadian rhythm. Then, after warming up, hit a few rounds of hard intervals. Whatever movement suits you best. Push yourself into that zone of discomfort where breathing is heavy and muscles are burning, then recover and repeat. Just 15 to 20 minutes, that's it. But the impact hormonally, metabolically, psychologically is disproportionately powerful. This is how you create leverage in your health, by understanding the levers you can pull that give you the most return for your effort. Intensity is one of those levers. And when you combine it with precision, like fasted training or proper recovery, you create a system where your body starts working for you, not against you. This is the kind of discipline that leads to long-term results, not just in the mirror, but in how you feel, how you recover, and how you show up in the world. And if you're following this journey through mindset motivation, this is exactly the kind of edge we want you to have. Not just more energy or more strength, but a deeper sense of control over your biology. Because when you understand what drives your hormones, you start to understand what drives your performance, your mindset, your mood, and ultimately your momentum. If you're looking to optimize the way your body functions, not just during a workout or a meal, but across the entire 24-hour cycle of performance, recovery, cognition, and even longevity, there's one practice that taps into nearly every system in your body and creates a kind of ripple effect. Fasting, specifically intermittent fasting. It's not new, it's not trendy for the sake of trendiness. It's wired deep into our physiology, and it speaks directly to some of the most fundamental mechanisms your body uses to regulate energy, hormones, and cellular repair. One of the most powerful hormonal responses you get from intermittent fasting is a significant increase in growth hormone, the very same hormone we talked about earlier, which plays a major role in fat metabolism, muscle preservation, tissue repair, and cognitive clarity. Now, most people associate growth hormone with sleep or exercise. And yes, those are big levers. But fasting, when done correctly, becomes a kind of multiplier. It enhances the amplitude and frequency of growth hormone pulses throughout the day. And that's key because GH doesn't just trickle out at a steady rate. It's secreted in pulses, and the magnitude of those pulses determines a lot about how your body heals, grows, and adapts. What's fascinating about fasting is that it triggers this hormone not in a stress-damaging way, but in a stress-adaptive way, meaning your body interprets the lack of food temporarily as a signal to optimize performance, to conserve lean mass, to become sharper, more alert, more efficient. From an evolutionary perspective, that makes perfect sense. When food was scarce, our biology had to ensure that we could still function at a high level, think clearly, move quickly, endure discomfort, so we could hunt, forage, solve problems. Growth hormone plays a central role in enabling that. In fact, within just 12 to 16 hours of fasting, GH levels can rise significantly. And with longer fasts, say 24 to 48 hours, which we're not necessarily recommending regularly, those levels can skyrocket even higher, in some cases up to 1,200%, depending on age, sex, and baseline metabolism. That's an enormous increase, and it's completely endogenous, meaning it comes from within with no external supplementation. Just you, your biology, and time. Now, what does that actually mean in practice? It means that when you compress your eating window typically into 8 hours or fewer, and allow your body to enter that fasted state for the remaining 16 hours or more, you're signaling it to preserve lean tissue and burn fat more efficiently. That's where GH steps in. It's anti-catabolic in this context. It protects muscle mass while simultaneously supporting lipolysis, the breakdown of fat stores for energy. So you're not just avoiding food, you're reshaping the way your body prioritizes fuel usage and tissue maintenance. That's a massive shift. And here's something most people overlook. Growth hormone doesn't act alone. It interacts with insulin, cortisol, adrenaline, and the timing of your fast matters because it influences the balance between these hormones. When insulin is low, as it is in a fasted state, growth hormone becomes more effective. You're essentially removing the hormonal resistance that can blunt GH's effects. Insulin and GH have a kind of inverse relationship. High insulin, as you'd see after frequent eating or heavy carb consumption, tends to suppress growth hormone. But when insulin drops, especially after 8, 10, or 12 hours without food, GH has more freedom to act on target tissues like muscle and liver. That's one reason why fasting isn't just about calories or weight loss. It's a hormonal recalibration. People often ask, but won't I lose muscle if I don't eat for long periods? And that's a reasonable concern. But here's the nuance. Short-term fasting, the kind done with intermittent patterns like 16-8 or 18-6, actually preserves muscle more than you might expect. And growth hormone is a big reason why. Your body is smart. It doesn't want to waste precious muscle tissue unless it absolutely has to. Instead, it turns to stored fat for energy, and GH helps orchestrate that shift. It helps maintain protein synthesis even in the absence of food. So the fear that skipping a meal automatically means you're losing gains is largely unfounded, as long as your protein intake and training are dialed in during your feeding window. Now let's think about this in a daily rhythm. Because fasting is not just about what you skip, it's about how it fits into your circadian biology. When you delay your first meal until later in the day, say noon or 1 p.m., and end your eating by 7 or 8 p.m., you allow your body to spend the morning and part of the afternoon in a fasted state where GH is elevated. Pair that with some sunlight exposure early in the day, maybe some low-intensity movement, and you're setting the stage for optimal hormone function. That's when GH peaks naturally, early morning, during sleep, and into the fasted hours of the day. And here's where this overlaps with performance and training. If you exercise toward the end of your fasting window, let's say around 10 or 11 a.m., having not eaten since dinner the night before, you create a beautiful synergy. Your GH is already elevated from the fast. Your adrenaline and dopamine are peaking from the anticipation of movement. You train hard, and that pushes GH even higher. Then, when you finally break your fast with a nutrient-dense meal, your insulin spikes slightly, your muscles are primed for recovery, and you've essentially leveraged your hormonal profile to its fullest extent. That's a smart way to train. That's strategic biology. Let's not ignore cognitive effects either. One of the things people consistently report during a fast, especially once they're adapted to it, is enhanced mental clarity. Because that's not a placebo. That's a real shift in neurotransmitter function. Fasting increases orexin, norepinephrine, and dopamine tone. But GH also plays a role here. It supports neurogenesis and neuroplasticity indirectly by facilitating recovery, reducing inflammation, and helping the brain adapt to stress. There's a reason so many high performers, creators, athletes, and thinkers rely on fasting, because it sharpens focus. And the brain, like the body, responds well to these rhythmic stressors, especially when they're controlled and consistent. So what should you do if you're new to fasting? Start gently. Don't overcomplicate it. Begin by pushing your breakfast an hour later than usual. Then 2 hours. Work toward a 16-hour fasting window and see how your body responds. Hydrate well, use electrolytes if needed, and remember, the goal isn't to suffer. The goal is to teach your body to become more metabolically flexible. Once it learns to shift between fed and fasted states efficiently, you gain more control, not just over your appetite, but over your mood, energy, and physical performance. That's when GH becomes not just a hormone you spike, but a hormone you optimize consistently. There's another powerful psychological layer here too. When you fast and you begin to detach from the constant need to feed, you regain a sense of internal discipline. You start to trust that your body knows what to do. You realize hunger is not an emergency. That kind of mental fortitude, it spills over into everything else. Decision-making, focus, productivity, even sleep. Because you're not on the roller coaster of constant glucose spikes and crashes. You're calm, you're clear, you're efficient. That's the hidden benefit of fasting, and GH is just one piece of that equation, but a very powerful piece. And if you're already doing resistance training or sprinting or high intensity work, stacking that with fasting is a game changer. You're not just burning fat, you're telling your body to prioritize growth and repair. You're reinforcing a hormonal loop that supports your goals rather than working against them. Because the truth is, for most people, the modern eating schedule, eating every 2-3 hours, snacking constantly, never letting insulin drop, it blunts GH, it inflames the system, and it disrupts natural energy rhythms. Fasting, in contrast, restores balance. It reminds your body how to function without constant input. And when you do eat, the food becomes more impactful because your body is actually primed to absorb and utilize it. So if your goal is to look better, feel better, think more clearly, and recover more efficiently, intermittent fasting, done intelligently and consistently, is one of the most powerful tools you can use. And the science around growth hormone makes it clear. This isn't just about skipping breakfast. It's about creating a hormonal environment that promotes fat loss, muscle preservation, mental sharpness, and long-term resilience. This is why I keep emphasizing tools like this on platforms like Mindset Motivation, because when you understand how your body works and you use that understanding to guide your daily behavior, you create leverage. You move the needle not with willpower alone, but with biology. And once you see how powerful that is, how different your days feel when GH is optimized, when energy is steady, when cravings are reduced, it becomes less about discipline and more about alignment. You stop fighting your biology and you start working with it. So when you think about growth hormone, don't just think sleep or exercise. Think fasting, think timing, think structure, and most of all, think consistency. Because the real benefit isn't just what happens during the fast, it's what happens to the rest of your life when your body starts running the way it was always designed to. If we're going to have an honest conversation about optimizing growth hormone, especially in a sustainable long-term way, we need to talk about something that's often neglected, sometimes misunderstood, but absolutely non-negotiable: deep sleep. We've already covered how high-intensity training can spike growth hormone and how fasting can amplify it. But if you're not sleeping well, especially not reaching enough deep sleep, you're missing the single most reliable natural surge of growth hormone your body has access to every 24 hours. It happens during sleep, specifically deep, slow-wave sleep. That's when the magic happens. Let's unpack why this matters. Every night when you fall asleep, your brain and body move through cycles. These are about 90 minutes long each, and each cycle has stages: light sleep, deep sleep, REM sleep. Now, during the early part of the night, those first 2 or 3 sleep cycles are rich in deep sleep. This is the non-REM slow wave sleep. And it's during this time that your pituitary gland releases the largest pulses of growth hormone. In fact, the majority of your total daily GH output happens in this window, between about 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. for most people, depending on their schedule and circadian alignment. That's not a small detail. That's the hormonal foundation your body builds every single night, assuming you give it the conditions it needs. What makes deep sleep so special is not just that it restores energy, it's that it's deeply anabolic. Meaning, it builds you up, it rebuilds tissue, enhances immune function, clears metabolic waste from the brain, and triggers growth hormone to go to work in a way that no supplement or training can replicate. GH isn't just elevated during this time, it's pulsed in high amplitude bursts, which are critical for muscle repair, fat metabolism, and cellular regeneration. This isn't theory, this is observable, measurable biology. And the quality of your deep sleep dictates the size and consistency of those pulses. So what determines deep sleep quality? It starts with circadian rhythm, the 24-hour biological clock that governs your sleep-wake cycle. Your body is wired to get the most deep sleep in the early part of the night. That's why the timing of your sleep matters. Going to bed at 1 or 2 a.m. might still give you 7 hours of sleep, but the composition of that sleep, how much of it is deep sleep, won't be the same. If you delay bedtime too far past your natural circadian window, you may skip over the period where your body is best primed for GH release, and you don't get that window back later in the night. This is why creating a consistent sleep schedule, going to bed and waking up at roughly the same time each day matters so much. It's not just about sleep quantity, it's about rhythm. Your brain and pituitary need that rhythm to coordinate hormonal output. Think of it like a symphony. If the conductor shows up late or the instruments come in at the wrong time, the music is off. Same with sleep. You might be asleep, but the hormonal signals aren't timed correctly, and that impacts everything from GH secretion to insulin sensitivity to cognitive recovery. Now let's go deeper into the biology. What triggers growth hormone release during deep sleep? There's a cascade that begins when you fall into that slow wave state. Body temperature drops, heart rate slows, and brain waves shift into delta frequency. That state signals the hypothalamus and pituitary to initiate a large pulse of GH, but this only happens when sleep is undisturbed and deep. Fragmented sleep or shallow sleep blunts this effect. So even if you're in bed for 8 hours, if you're waking up frequently or spending most of the night in light sleep, you're missing the full growth hormone benefit. One of the best ways to support deep sleep is by controlling light exposure. In the hours leading up to bedtime, your exposure to artificial light, especially blue light from screens, can delay melatonin release. Melatonin is not just the sleep hormone, it's also the gatekeeper that helps initiate the transition into deep sleep. So when melatonin is suppressed because of screen use or bright lighting at night, your body takes longer to drop into slow wave sleep. That delay reduces the total amount of deep sleep you get in the early part of the night, which in turn reduces the total GH output. It's a simple fix, but a powerful one. Dimming lights after sunset, wearing blue light, blue blocking glasses, or just stepping outside for natural light early in the morning and avoiding bright light at night, those habits recalibrate your circadian system, which leads to more efficient sleep and stronger hormonal signaling. Temperature is another lever. Your body needs to drop core temperature by about 1 to 2 degrees Fahrenheit in order to initiate and sustain deep sleep. If your bedroom is too warm, or you're using heavy bedding, or you've eaten a heavy meal too close to bedtime, that temperature drop is compromised, and guess what suffers? The quality and duration of slow wave sleep, and with it, the size of your GH pulses. The ideal sleeping environment is dark, quiet, and cool, somewhere between 60 and 67 degrees Fahrenheit. That's the range where deep sleep becomes more accessible. Your body likes it slightly cool at night because that mimics the natural drop in environmental temperature that our ancestors experienced when the sun went down. But here's something most people don't realize. Growth hormone secretion during deep sleep isn't just about recovery, it's also about memory. GH supports cognitive consolidation. When you sleep deeply, your brain is literally rewiring itself, is taking the information you absorb during the day and turning it into durable memories and insights. GH plays a role in that by supporting neurogenesis and the structural changes in the brain that underlie learning. So if you're someone trying to master a new skill or build a business or simply make better decisions, GH isn't just helping your body, it's upgrading your mind. Now think about this in the context of lifestyle. If you're burning the candle at both ends, staying up late, staring at screens, eating late at night, maybe throwing in caffeine too late in the day, you're cutting off the very thing that gives you your edge. You're stealing from the bank of performance by sacrificing sleep. And no amount of training, no perfect diet, no supplement stack will ever fully compensate for poor sleep. Because the hormone that does the heavy lifting, literally and figuratively, is growth hormone, and you earn it in the quiet, invisible hours of the night when no one's watching. That's where progress is actually made. For people in their 20s and 30s, GH secretion is already higher than in older adults. But even at that age, the difference between great sleep and poor sleep is dramatic. As we age, GH naturally declines, but the good news is deep sleep can help maintain healthier levels for longer. And it's a positive feedback loop. Better sleep promotes GH promotes better tissue repair, which improves sleep quality and so on. But that loop can also work in reverse if sleep is consistently neglected. Chronic sleep deprivation not only reduces GH release, but increases cortisol, a stress hormone that works against the benefits of GH. So you're not just missing the upside, you're actively creating more wear and tear on your body. Some people think they can just catch up on weekends or bank sleep later, but that's not how deep sleep and growth hormone work. The GH pulses that occur in the early part of the night are time sensitive. Miss them and they don't simply show up the next morning. The pituitary doesn't issue a rain check. That's why consistency is so important, not just in how long you sleep, but when you sleep. Because your internal clock is expecting those hormonal events to happen at a specific time, and when that timing is thrown off, the signals weaken. You might still fall asleep, but your sleep won't be as restorative and GH output won't be as strong. Now, let's zoom out. Think about how this connects with the other pieces we've already discussed. Fasting and high-intensity training. Fasting during the day keeps GH elevated when insulin is low. Intense training spikes GH in response to effort and lactate production. And sleep, especially deep sleep, is when the majority of tissue repair actually happens, fueled by growth hormone. So when you align these three practices, when you train hard, fast, smart, and sleep deep, you create a continuous cycle of hormonal optimization. That's the blueprint for performance. That's how you get results without burnout. This is the kind of alignment that we talk about a lot here on Mindset Motivation, because real motivation doesn't come from hype or temporary inspiration. It comes from seeing progress, feeling sharper, recovering faster, showing up with more energy. That's what happens when your hormones are in sync with your behavior, when biology supports ambition, and it all hinges on sleep, on respecting the deep, silent process that powers your growth from the inside out. So if you want to grow physically, mentally, emotionally, start by protecting your sleep, not just by getting enough hours, but by designing your evenings around deep rest. Dim the lights, shut down the screens, cool the room, create rhythm. Give your biology the signal that says it's time to restore. Because in that deep, dark silence, when everything slows down, your body is doing its most important work. It's building the version of you that's ready to take on tomorrow. We've already walked through the powerful ways high-intensity training, intermittent fasting, and deep sleep unlock natural growth hormone production. Each of those tools taps into a specific biological rhythm, but there's one more tool, one more lever you can pull that often gets overlooked, and yet it holds tremendous potential to supercharge your internal chemistry. It's something raw, primal, and immediately felt. I'm talking about cold exposure. Yes, cold showers, ice baths, cold plunges, that sharp jolt that hits your nervous system like lightning and pulls you right into the present moment. That isn't just discomfort. It's an ancient biological signal. And when used strategically, cold exposure is a powerful stimulus for growth hormone release. Now, let me be clear. This isn't just about mental toughness or braving the cold for bragging rights. The science is clear. Brief, repeated exposure to cold activates your sympathetic nervous system, increases norepinephrine levels, and elevates growth hormone in both the short and long term. It's a stressor, yes, but it's a hormetic stressor, meaning when done correctly and consistently, it produces adaptive responses that strengthen your biology over time. And GH, growth hormone, is right at the center of that adaptation process. So how exactly does this work? When you immerse your body in cold water, even for just a few minutes, your body interprets that as a survival threat. Core temperature drops, blood vessels constrict, the nervous system surges into alert mode. That activation triggers a release of catecholamines like norepinephrine and epinephrine, and simultaneously growth hormone levels spike in an attempt to preserve tissue, stimulate metabolic activity, and support cellular repair. In other words, your body is trying to keep you alive and rebuild stronger. It's this biological response that makes cold exposure more than just a morning shock ritual. It's a tool for enhancing anabolic recovery, fat metabolism, mental resilience, and of course, the release of GH. What's fascinating is that this GH response is not a one-time event. Repeated exposure, especially with short, sharp bouts of cold, can lead to sustained elevation of growth hormone throughout the day. And this happens even in the absence of exercise or fasting. Now, I'm not saying cold replaces those things. It doesn't. But it complements them. It fills in the hormonal picture in a way that layers perfectly with the practices we've already discussed. If you train intensely in the morning, fast during the day, sleep deeply at night, and include cold exposure somewhere in that routine, you're hitting GH release from every possible angle. Let's talk specifics. You don't need to live in a cryotherapy chamber to get the benefits. Even a 2 to 5 minute cold shower, ideally below 60 degrees Fahrenheit, can activate this pathway. If you have access to a cold plunge or ice bath, even better. Immersing the body in water between 50 and 59 degrees Fahrenheit has been shown to elicit significant hormonal responses, especially when practiced regularly. The key is intensity and consistency. The cold must be cold enough to create a real stress signal, and it must be done often enough that your body begins to adapt. There's also a timing element here that matters. Cold exposure done in the morning can help spike alertness and GH early in the day, setting the tone for mental clarity, energy, and focus. If you're training later in the day, post-workout cold exposure, especially a few hours after training, can extend the hormonal benefits and accelerate recovery. But if you're chasing hypertrophy or strength gains, avoid immediate cold right after lifting, as it may blunt some of the inflammation signals necessary for muscle growth. Instead, space it out. Give your body time to begin that anabolic process, then use cold as a secondary signal to reduce soreness, improve circulation, and amplify GH output. Now, here's something you might not expect. Cold exposure not only increases GH, but it also enhances brown fat activity. Brown adipose tissue is metabolically active fat that burns calories to generate heat. When activated by cold, this tissue improves insulin sensitivity, elevates metabolism, and contributes to leanness. And interestingly, growth hormone helps regulate brown fat development and activity. So again, we see a loop forming. Cold boosts GH, GH supports brown fat, and brown fat improves metabolic efficiency and resilience. It's not a linear path, it's a network. And if you step into the cold consistently, you're lighting up that entire network. But beyond the physiology, there's a mindset shift that happens when you face the cold. That's why we highlight this kind of habit here on Mindset Motivation, because you're not just stepping into a cold shower, you're stepping into discomfort voluntarily. You're telling your nervous system, I can handle this. And that choice, choosing stress before it chooses you, is one of the most empowering things you can do. It conditions you to meet challenge with clarity, not avoidance. It teaches you that discipline is a doorway, not a punishment. And guess what? The body responds in kind, with hormonal rewards that support growth across every domain. Let me also touch on the neurological effects, because they matter just as much. When you expose yourself to cold, dopamine levels rise, and not just for a few minutes. Studies have shown that dopamine can remain elevated for hours afterward. This neurochemical shift pairs beautifully with GH elevation because it promotes motivation, drive, and focus. You literally literally prime your brain for action. So it's no wonder that people who start their day with cold exposure report higher productivity, improved mood, and greater resilience to stress. It's not placebo, it's neuroendocrine reality. Now, we need to acknowledge that cold exposure isn't always comfortable or convenient, but that's part of the point. You're teaching your body to adapt to the unexpected, and that adaptation pays off in ways that go far beyond just hormone levels. You become more alert, more grounded, more capable of navigating challenge. And the added bonus is that your physiology is working for you, not against you. You've tapped into a powerful signal and your body has listened. But here's where the practice becomes transformational. When you combine cold exposure with breath control, not just shallow breathing, but deep, slow, diaphragmatic breathing while in the cold. Because when the cold hits, your instinct is to tense up, hold your breath, panic. But if instead you meet that cold with calm, if you breathe through it, slow it down, you're training a deeper form of control, one that extends into your work, your relationships, your goals, and in that state, your nervous system recalibrates. Cortisol drops, recovery improves, and again, growth hormone quietly does its job behind the scenes. So if you're serious about growth, real growth, not just physical, but cognitive, emotional, metabolic, start looking at cold exposure not as a challenge to be endured, but as a tool to be embraced. Make it part of your ritual. Stack it with intention after a morning fast, before your biggest work session, after an evening workout. Use it to punctuate your day with clarity. And know that every time you step into the cold, you're signaling your biology to wake up, adapt, and grow. And the best part is this isn't some exotic tool only available to elite athletes or people with access to luxury spas. Anyone can do this. You can start right now. Turn that shower cold for the last 30 seconds. Do it again tomorrow. Build from there. Let your system learn that this stress is safe, that this pressure builds capacity. And with every repetition, you're rewriting what your body is capable of. You're upgrading your system at a cellular level. So now let's zoom out. We've talked about high intensity training and how it floods the bloodstream with lactate, triggering GH spikes in response to effort. We've talked about fasting, about how periods of no food shift the hormonal gears into a state that favors repair, fat metabolism, and growth hormone output. We've looked at deep sleep, the essential nightly ritual where your brain and body do the heavy lifting of recovery, powered by pulses of GH in the early part of the night. And now we add cold exposure, short, strategic moments of discomfort that send a powerful signal. Adapt, evolve, get stronger. All of these tools are available. All of them compound. But none of them work if you're passive. Growth hormone doesn't respond to good intentions. It responds to behavior, to choice, to challenge. And when you consistently show up with practices that challenge your physiology to rise to the occasion, your body responds. It's not magic. It's biology. Refined through habit, elevated by mindset. And that's why we bring these ideas to you here at Mindset Motivation, because you're not just here to learn, you're here to become, to take ownership of your biology, to unlock your potential, and to live a life that isn't reactive, but deliberate. So take these tools, test them, start small, stay consistent, and watch what happens. Not just in your body, but in your mind. Because when you train your system to embrace challenge, when you condition your habits to align with your physiology, and when you choose the cold, the fast, the intensity, the recovery, then growth stops being a theory. It becomes who you are. And that's where transformation begins.